So today, students, we are going to look at some ways of achieving equivalence. So you know that sometimes you could translate your text exactly from source language into target language and have all the words and symbols written exact the same, but you shouldn't do that because you are not going to have the same effect. Why is that? Firstly, it is because a lot of time it depends on the differences between source language culture and the target language culture. So, and what is the main goal of the translator? You know that the main goal of the translator is to convey the message of the text from one language into other. Yes, and what to do? Yes, are there any ways or methods that the translator can do to achieve better equivalence in translation? Okay, let's continue. So let's go to another slide. So, okay, if you look here, you can see the plan of today's lecture. So, firstly, we'll talk about the types of translation techniques. So, in details, later in details, we will describe, yes, such techniques like transcription, transliteration, and calc translation. And also I will record other videos, yes. The second one will be devoted to the grammatical transformations, and the third one to the lexical transformations, and lastly I will give some examples where the translator can make some complex transformations, okay? Complex means lexical and semantical, or sorry, lexical and grammatical transformations together. So now let's start with the first title, Types of Translation Techniques. What are the main types of translation techniques? So the main types of translation techniques are mechanical copying and transformations. Okay, mechanical copying or transfer of the source language words include, yes, there are some methods of mechanical copying. They are transcription, yes, which means copying the sound form of the source language word by means of the target language letters. For example, eau de cologne, yes, is translated like eau de cologne into Russian. Yes, baseball is also an example of a transcription. So the next method is transliteration. It is copying the letters of the source language by the target language letters of another system. For example, London, yes, is transliterated into Russian like London, and Washington is rendered like Washington. Okay, and some linguists, yes, and one of them is Komisarov, considers that calc translation is also a type of mechanical copying. And what is calc translation? Calc translation is translation by parts. For example, extralinguistic is translated like внеязыковой into Russian. Carry out, yes, here is the verb and the preposition. Structure, yes, okay, is translated like на вынос, and the Russian word небоскреб is translated like skyscraper. Yes, here you see the examples of some phrases or words which are translated by parts. Since the calc word is not just a mechanical borrowing of the form, but it undergoes some changes, this device is to some extent an actual translation, which includes form transformations. So, and the other way of achieving equivalence, yes, are translation, making translation transformations. Okay, so translation transformations are complete changes of the appearance of a translated word, phrase, or sentence. Yes. In foreign translation theory, transformations are known as shifts of translation. And the translation transformations can be of three categories. The first category is grammatical transformations, the second one is lexical transformations, and the third one is complex, both lexical and grammatical transformations. So, okay, let's explain each method of equivalence, yes, in detail. Now, firstly, let's look at the transcription method. Transcription is a method of writing down speech sounds, yes, as we have mentioned above. It is essential to differentiate between a phonetic transcription and a practical transcription. Sometimes it's called a translation transcription. Yes, that is about the method that is which is used by translators in their translating process. So phonetic transcription, you know, yes, sounds are depicted by special symbols on the basis of their articulatory and auditory identity. Yes, in English language you have a special transcription symbols, yes, and they are used to describe, yes, or to illustrate, okay, to illustrate the sound of the word, yes, okay, not the spelling but the sound form of the word. So and the practical transcription is an interlinguistic operation as it deals with two languages. The sounds of the source language word are rendered by the letters of the target language. Okay, and here you can see two examples. Because the English, yes, which uses the Latin alphabet, and Russian with Cyrillic alphabets, yes, they differ. Yes, and their sounds, the sounds of these two alphabets don't coincide, yes? And there are special rules for representing English sounds by Russian letters and Russian sounds by English letters. And the same with the Kazakh language. Okay, now we will look at some rules, yes, how to transcribe English sounds with Russian letters. So the first combination of letters, which is TH, yes, which gives the interdental sound the, correspond to the Russian T, yes, Russian sound T. For example, as in the name Thatcher, yes, it is transcribed like Thatcher. And the same with the word Thackeray, yeah, you see. But sometimes these sounds correspond to the Russian S. Yes, but that is a bit outdated. Like in the name Galsworthy, yes, it is rendered into Russian like Golsworthy, Golsworthy. Okay, so in Greek words, the interdental sound is rendered by the Russian f, Russian sound f. For example, Athens, yes, is translated like Athene, and semistocles is translated like Themistocles. Okay, so let's look at other rules of transcribing English sounds with Russian letters. The English W sound, yes, is transmitted by the letter U, yes, Russian U, if followed by a vowel. Yes, for example, in the example with William, yes, W, then vowel I. Yes, the first one, the first sound, yes, W, is transcribed like William, yes, with the Russian letter U. The same is with Wilder. So, but when followed by the vowel U, the consonant W is rendered by the letter, Russian letter V. For example, wolf, yes, wolf, okay, woodhouse, woodhouse. However, there are some traditional cases of the sound W represented by the letter V, like in these examples, Washington, Walter, yes, in Russian it is Walter Scott, yeah. So in the English variant is Walter Scott, Walter Scott. Okay, the same is true in reference to the borrowed, yes, mostly German names. For example, the name Wagner is rendered like Wagner. Yes, Wilhelm is an example of such borrowed names. Okay, so and other rules. Okay, the English h sound can be represented sound. Yes, how English sound, which is not similar with the Russian h sound. Yes, but anyway, it can be represented represented by Russian. Sorry, h. Yes, but also it can be transmitted. It can be transcribed. Yes, by Russian g also. Yes, either h or g. So, for example, Haley, yes, and or Gamilton, yes, the English name Hamilton. Thus, some words acquire two forms in Russian. Yes, Hoffman can be translated like Hoffman or Goffman. Okay, so ng combination of letters ng, which gives the sound in English. Yes, sound is transliterated by ng, letters ng in Russian. For example, Jennings, yes, is rendered Jennings. The same with the word Washington, yes, in Russian. Okay, good. The next is the vowel sound. Yes, your vowel sound. So the vowel after the consonant corresponds to the Russian yo. For example, burns. In the beginning of the word, this sound is represented by the letter e. Yes. Okay. For example, Earl Court. Earls. Yes, it is rendered into Russian like Earl's Court. So the sound a is represented in Russian by 3 different letters. Yes, but similar. It can be like e, ye, or a. And you can see on this slide, you can see examples. Yes, of this rendering. So now about some rules of transcribing Russian sounds with English letters. This is also a bit difficult because the two alphabets don't coincide. Yes, and there are some other sounds which don't exist in the other language. Yes, the sounds which exist in source language don't exist in the target language. Okay. So, я represented in writing by the letter I краткая, corresponds to the English Y or I in the end of the word. For example, in the end of the word, it is like Y, yes, Tolstoy, Trotsky, for example, yes, and to I in the beginning of the word. Yeah, in the beginning of the word, if you can see this sound, yes, it can be rendered into Russian with the краткий I. If Y sound makes part or parcel of a vowel letter, like ye, yo, you, ya, Russian ye, yo, you, ya, it is represented by Y or I. Yes, and you can see examples. Okay, let's continue. So the Russian Z sound is rendered by the combination of ZH, yes. Then H, yeah. Russian sound H corresponds to KH in English, yes, and really only H. So T sound in Russian is represented by TS. Then but anyway, the translator should care about some foreign words. Yes, they usually have their native form. For example, Zurich. Yes, Russian word Zurich. Yes, in Russian, yeah, it is rendered like as you can see on this slide here. Okay, and this one is also borrowed words. Yes. Okay, good. So please the next slide. Okay. So, Russian sound ch, yes, may correspond either to ch or tch, yes, and you can see examples. Then another sound, different sound from English, yes, Russian sound sh, yes, с хвостиком, is represented by the cluster SHCH or just SCH, yes, okay. So one sound, yes, is represented by 4 English letters, you see. Okay. Then Russian sound «ы», твердое «ы», usually corresponds to English «y», as in the example with Kuybyshev, Kuybyshev, not I, but with Y. Okay, these were some main rules of transcribing English words into Russian and Russian words into English. Okay, now let's continue. The next way of giving equivalence, yes, is transliteration. So, abroad, transliteration defined as writing a word in a different alphabet. Different languages have different equivalents for Russian letters. For example, yes, the Russian word lapshin, yeah, can be rendered differently in different languages. Yes, and you can see a list of rendering in 5 languages. Yes, and the first one is English, and it is given like lapshin. Yes, lapshin. Okay, good. So the next slide, please. Yes. The major systems for transliterating Russian words into English are the British Standards Institution, then International Organization for Standardization, the Library of Congress, and the Permanent Committee on Geographic Names System. So when transliterating, it is best to use the version which most closely approximates the source language word. Thus the form ruble, yes, ruble, like Russian ruble, kopek, tsar are preferable to the alternatives, yes, these words, ruble, kopek, and the tsar. Okay. Now let's look at the rules about the mute R sound. Yeah, mute R letter. So is always transliterated in Russian. For example, in the phrase, yes, of the name of the newspaper, Morning Star, yes, there are 2 in each word. There is one mute R letter. And it is transliterated into Russian like morning star, whereas the mute E is usually omitted. Yes, it is not the same with mute E. Mute E is not transliterated. So transliteration and transcription often complete, so that sometimes it is difficult to state how to render a word, especially a personal or place name in the other language. But transliteration is preferred to transcription in bibliographical citations found in publications. So transliteration is preferable to transcription. So here is an example. On this slide you can see an example of physics name Newton. Yes, in modern language we transliterate it like Newton. Yes, Newton. Oh, sorry, it is transcription method. Yes, in Newton transcription method. But anyway, in the 18th century, yes, Lomonosov used this name like with the transliteration method, yes, saying Nefton. So the next way of translation, the next method is calc translation. Blueprint translation is the translation of a word or phrase by parts. For example, kitchenette kitchenette is here you can see the root, yes, with the suffix. Okay, so and it is translated into Russian, yes, with the same model. So another example of compound noun, brainwashing, brainwashing, brainwashing. And it is translated also like the phrase, yes, with the same form. So then you can see an example of the word combination, yes, the name of the illness. Okay, and the same methods, yes, I mean calc translation is used to translate the leaf Zolotoy Rog, golden hornby, golden hornby. So they can occur half calcs in cases where half of the word is borrowed through transcription or transliteration and the other half is translated. For example, South Korea. Korea is the name of the place, yes, the name of the country. And South Korea is just transliterated, yes, okay. And South is translated. So, but calc translation can be very tricky as it may result in translators' false friends, and which can lead to misleading translations. Yes, misunderstanding. So, for example, high school phrase, high school in English means средняя школа in Russian, but not высшая школа. The word restroom, yes, if we translate it using calc translation method, yes, we can translate it like комната отдыха, but actually it's not the same like комната отдыха, yes, and you can see it's equivalent here. Okay, so the same with дом отдыха, yes, it is not the rest home. Yeah, if you translate it like just like this phrase, yes, дом отдыха, rest home, no, it won't be the correct equivalent, yes. Okay, so and this is the equivalent of дом отдыха. So, and that's it about the mechanical copying, yes, about transliteration, transcription, and calc translation. In other videos, I will try to explain other ways of equivalence. So about transformations, yes, about lexical transformations, grammatical transformations, and complex transformations.